Hi everyone, some gamer dude here. In retrospect, I probably should have gotten around to a Digimon card game review months ago. I was pretty hyped for the game around the Japanese release, but that hype gradually diminished as time went on. That said, I ended up playing it quite a bit over February via Untap, then physically, and I think it's time to get my rear into gear. Let's do this. The Digimon card game is the 4th English and 5th Japanese Digimon trading card game from Bandai. This Digimon card game is by far the most successful of the lot, only the original Digital Monster card game Hyper Colosseum being comparable. Its success can be attributed to many factors both in Japan and the West, but it is ultimately a case of right time, right place, and right game. The Digimon card game is essentially Bandai's earlier multi-IP crossover expandable card game, the Chrono Clash system. Digimon reuses so much from Chrono Clash that you could take the excess zeros off Digimon's values and the games would be compatible. Being a reuse of the Chrono Clash system, this also makes Digimon highly derivative of Duel Masters, as Chrono Clash was essentially a Duel Masters mod. Therefore, as with my Chrono Clash review, expect to hear the phrase like Duel Masters a lot. I'll be using the phrase like Chrono Clash as well. The goal of the Digimon card game is the exact same as Duel Masters and the Chrono Clash system. Break all of your opponent's shields, here called security, then attack them directly. Cards are broken up into 4 types, starting with the Digi-Eggs. Digi-Eggs, the lowest level of Digimon in the game, usually depict both the baby and in-training stages. These inhabit their own deck called the Digi-Egg deck, which has a limit of 5. Digimon are your creature equivalent. They have their battle stat on the top right, play cost and Digivolve cost on the top left, effect in the middle, and inherited abilities on the bottom. Options are your sorcery equivalent. They have their cost on the top left, effect in the middle, and shield trigger effect, here called security effect, on the bottom. Unlike Duel Masters, where shield trigger just lets you play the card for free, Digimon has specific instructions for when the card is destroyed as security, like Chrono Clash System's Guardians. Finally, Tamers. This is your enchantment equivalent. Same layout as options. Cost on the top left, effect in the center, security effect on the bottom. Game preparation is shuffling and setting aside your 5-card Digi-Egg deck, shuffling your 50-card deck, placing the top 5 cards in front of you as security, drawing 5 cards, and setting the time gauge, here called the memory, to 0. As with Chrono Clash, there is no mulligan in Digimon. The turn starts with drawing a card, with the exception of the first player. The first thing you can do is crack a Digi-Egg by placing the top card of your Digi-Egg deck into the breeding area, a zone where you can Digivolve a Digimon, and it cannot be targeted by effects. Only one Digimon may inhabit the breeding area at a time. You may also move a Digimon out of the breeding area into play. You cannot do both in one turn. During the main phase, you may attack, play a Digimon, Digivolve a Digimon, play a Tamer, use an activated effect, or play an option. Digimon utilizes the same resource system as the Chrono Clash system. A gauge that gradually moves to your opponent as you play cards. The amount the gauge moves is the cost of the card, and when the gauge moves past 0 and you have given your opponent resources, your turn ends. Options have an interesting quirk to them, where you must have a Tamer, a Digimon in play, or a Digimon in your breeding area of the same colour to play it. Because Digimon must Digivolve from the same colour, and splashing Digimon isn't the easiest thing to achieve, bar megas with on-play effects, Tamers are by far the easiest path to options of other colours. Tamers and options are pretty bog standard for their card types. Options do things and are discarded, Tamers stay in play and have either triggered, continuous, or activated effects. Digimon themselves are where the game's unique identity gets to shine through. Digimon have 2 costs, one on top where you can just play it onto the field, or a cost below that, where you can Digivolve a Digimon 1 level below in play of the same colour as the cost by stacking it on top. Then draw a card. Most Digimon only digivolve from the same colour they are. So a red rookie becomes a red champion, which becomes a red ultimate, and finally a red mega. Others can digivolve from their own colour and another colour, usually for flavour reasons, such as Mastamon here. Digimon with inherited effects at the bottom of their card give those effects to the higher level forms, so through Digivolution you can combine effects. The game openly promotes this, as many Digimon in a Digivolution line are made with synergistic abilities. Digivolving is not playing cards, however. On-play effects do not trigger when you Digivolve. Digimon also have summoning sickness. They cannot attack on the same turn they are played. Unlike Duel Masters, where the evolution mechanic circumvents this, Digivolution does not. This only becomes relevant when a larger Digimon or option, a card with a cost of 6 or more, is played by your opponent, giving you a lot of memory. Most of the time, playing a card will end your turn. The battle system is the exact same as the Chrono Clash system. Tap your Digimon, designate a tapped Digimon or your opponent as the target. If your Digimon has the same DP as the target Digimon, both die. If yours is higher, your opponent's Digimon dies. If your Digimon attacks a player, reveal and destroy the top card of their security. If the revealed card is a Digimon with the same or higher DP, the attacker dies. If it's a tamer or option with a security effect, it is used for free. In BTO3, Digimon that can play themselves for free when revealed as security are introduced. The keyword security attack plus X increases the amount of damage a Digimon does. This is a 1-by-1 situation. So if the Digimon dies or loses security attack for whatever reason, the damage stops. If your opponent has no security and you attack them successfully, you win. While Digimon can be described as pretty much Chrono Clash, that's not an entirely accurate analysis of the game. It's completely true, but because of the changes to the game when going from Chrono Clash to Digimon, it's surprisingly different. The security stack is noticeably weaker than the Guardian stack due to Digimon with security effects not being common and limited to the type of shield trigger effects you'd find on creatures in Duel Masters. Play the Digimon for free. You don't get things like when it dies as a Guardian, blow up a battler, or tap a battler, or gain time, or the like. Powerful security effects like that are limited to option cards, like how Duel Masters limits them to spells. Even tamers just play themselves. They do not give effects. This actually makes Digimon closer to Duel Masters than it does Chrono Clash. Yes, it retains the shields fight back from Chrono Clash, but that's about it. Digimon does not utilize the Sentinel mechanic. For those unaware, Sentinel was a mechanic in Chrono Clash for battlers that magnetized attacks to it so long as it was tapped. The issue was it gave complete control to the attacker and was hard to maintain due to the risk associated with attacking the Guardian stack. Instead, Digimon utilizes the tried and true blocker mechanic. Again, like Duel Masters. Something attacks, you tap a blocker, attack is redirected. I much prefer this, as it puts defense back into the hands of the defender, and there are no risks involved. You choose what to block, how to block, and when to block. Every other difference between the two games cascades from the Digi-Egg deck and the focus on Digivolution. Digimon pushes the Digivolution mechanic hard. Inherited effects, reduced costs, cantripping off Digivolution. Everything about Digivolution is a reward. This results in very mixed feelings towards hard summoning Digimon. It feels like you're paying more for something with less impact or potential. It's not really the case. There are definitely circumstances where hard summoning is the right choice. Typically passive abilities like jamming, or just getting a big body fast. But it creates a nagging thought in the back of your head while playing, a feeling that you're not getting the most out of your cards. Chrono Clash has nothing of the sort. It's a straight summon end-turn scenario. Decisions aren't as big as Digimon. Do I summon or do I hold out for a cantrip and chain skills? Do I give up effects for a beta or board presence? The result is that the game has a remarkably different feel to it. It's arguably a very small change, but it is so significant to how the player approaches the game. I've mentioned multiple times in the past that Digimon and Chrono Clash are pretty much compatible. They are. But it's rather surprising how different they feel in execution. Digimon is a much more visceral experience due to Digivolution. Evolution mechanics always feel good. It's stimulating to see cards get bigger and stronger, regardless of game. But here you get so many rewards on top of that. It's not like Pokemon or Duel Masters, where the card is locked behind the evolution mechanic. Quite the reverse. Digimon gives you a choice not to do it. It just wants you to. The closest equivalent in Chrono Clash system would be the extra battlers, but they have a very different feel due to utilizing a Yu-Gi-Oh!-esque sacrifice mechanic. Digimon's Digivolution feels like where the evolution concept would naturally go, and is far better executed than similar mechanics in other games, such as Magic's Mutation. I think it's also a practical application of the backer mechanic. Instead of using expensive to produce clear plastic cards, it segments part of the cards to remain revealed. Originally I said that Digivolution could have been done in Chrono Clash, and I stick to that. It could have been done. But I think I really understated how well it works as a central identity for Digimon. Digimon is Digivolution. One thing I like about Digimon that isn't really talked about is the presentation. It's very no frills and practical looking, but it's also very appealing. Cards are bright, colourful, and easy to read. While this is likely a result of the intended demographic, children, it feels like a breath of fresh air when so many new games can be so dark, grim, or over-designed. I like the simplicity here, and everything about the frame works well. I think the artwork is nice too. Not what I would have used myself. I'm a huge fan of the old Bandai art for Digimon, all gritty with veins, but contrasting with the bright colours. But I like what's here. It feels like a hybrid of Bandai and Toei's Digimon art, and it works quite well. It's got the grittiness of Bandai and the warmth of Toei. The cards also feel really good. They're thick, they have a nice texture to them, and are of very high quality. I'm also a fan of the cards used for the rules. It's an idea I've had myself in the past, but I think the execution is really good. Everything is here, what's on the back of the memory gauge isn't needed after you set up, and the sequence of information given is in the correct order for it to be easily absorbed. Digimon is poised to be the inheritor of Duel Masters' legacy. In Japan, current Duel Masters, from my understanding, isn't particularly loved due to the current mechanic, Gacha-Renji summon, vomiting cards onto the field. In the West, especially internationally, we don't have anything like Duel Masters anymore. The closest would be Final Fantasy, but it doesn't use a shield system. Digimon can take the place of early Duel Masters in Japan and Duel Masters period in the West. While the pacing is a little wonky due to the resource gauge, it doesn't have the gradual escalation of Duel Masters. Digimon does retain a lot of what made Duel Masters good, and is a fun game. Yes, we've seen it all before. Duel Masters, Chrono Clash, Magic, and Pokemon are its main influences, but it executes it really well. If you like Duel Masters or Chrono Clash system, you'll like this. It all comes together under a beloved IP and provides a solid, enjoyable experience. This is where I'd normally criticize something about game design. I don't have a criticism regarding the design of the game. I think everything functions well, and the core of the game is fun. A lot of fun. Just like the games it's built upon. One could make the argument for restrictive deck building due to the focus on Digivolution, but I don't feel that way. When dealing with evolution mechanics, you should expect card ratios to be part of the game. It's no different to resource curves, and in my opinion, a silly argument. I could address the elephant in the room that is availability, but I won't. Mostly because the criticisms I have for Digimon kind of render the lack of availability a moot point. I don't like two aspects of the card design. Firstly, on playabilities. Digimon inherits Chrono Clash System's resource management issue. People give their opponent as little resources as possible, so the bigger card their opponent plays, the more they can play. Shut down their opponent's turn as fast as possible. To counter this, Digimon has a cycle of 4 cost tamers that set you at 3 memory if your opponent gives you less than that. This means that on-play are best used by rookies, since their normal cost to play is 3. On the flip side of that, Megas, cards like Machindramon, Puppetmon and Magnadramon, cards with either big control or defensive effects on big bodies, are perfectly usable too. Yes, they cost a lot, but you get mileage out of that big cost because the effect and body are worth it. They're explosive. They don't cause timing issues either. Mega level Digimon ending your turn isn't that big of an issue. The issue lies with champions and ultimates. They cost too much to be comparable to rookies and don't do enough to be comparable to megas. They're also largely made to be utility cards that set up other plays. But you can't do that because they require so much memory to summon. Summon them, turn is over. You can't effectively use them unless your opponent sets you up. This results in champions that feel like overcosted rookies and ultimates that feel like underpowered megas. There are some exceptions, but they are few and far between. This goes with my earlier point that Digivolution is pushed. With that in mind, I have to wonder whether the design ethos behind on-play champions and ultimates is on purpose. But we can live with that. Champions and ultimates with on-play effects are largely unappealing prospects. Duly noted. What really hit me is just how uninteresting the Digimon card game really is. All because of the cards. I think sets 1 through 3, the initial 2 sets in English, are pretty good and follow a similar train of evolution to Duel Masters. The base set introduces the base concepts and is very well defined. While not all colours are on the same level, identity is clear and the game is fun. Set 2 expands upon the colours, introduces the remaining 2 colours, black and purple, and shows where the game can go. It starts focusing around Digimon species with Tiger, a tamer that functions with all Tyrannomon type Digimon. Then you have 2 decks, Ultra Force Vidramon and Shine Greymon, that focus on tamer interaction. Set 3 follows suit with Leopardmon, a deck that focuses on lower level Digimon gaining jamming, but the crack starts showing there. That's about as interesting as Set 3 gets. It does introduce Digimon that summon themselves after battling insecurity, but they literally don't do anything else. The rest is arguably more of the same, just taking the concepts introduced in the prior 2 sets and making more of it. Fair enough, follow-ups are hard. Maybe they'll do something next set and it'll be interesting. Set 4 introduces some new concepts, the first being hybrid Digivolution. Emulating Digimon Frontier, this amounts to tamers serving as rookies for hybrids. Then further cards build on that. Flavorful, but not terribly interesting. The second is Digiboost, essentially Soul Blast from Vanguard, using Digivolution sources as a resource. This opens up deck construction to more on-Digivolution effects and less inherited abilities, while promoting activated abilities with limits and costs. Functional, but not engaging. Other than that, you get Rush, what Digimon calls Haste, not the most useful of abilities with this resource system. Set 5 follows suit, more Digiburst, more specific Digimon chain support. The only interesting thing it introduces is Advance, an altered form of Chrono Clash system Sneak Attack. That is more than a bit concerning, as Sneak Attack was widely hated. An auto-attack function after your opponent has memory. While Advance doesn't reduce the cost, it doesn't kill the attacker either. Digimon is literally repeating Chrono Clash System's mistakes now. Then compare this to Duel Masters Beginner's Block. Set 1 introduced the colours and core. Set 2 evolutions. Set 3 focused on monocolour decks. Set 4 focused on allied colour decks and introduced shield trigger creatures. Set 5 introduced Triple Breaker Speed Attacker and Survivor. The first 5 sets arguably had more going for them than Digimon's first 5 sets. Even the next core set, Set 6, introduced race support and tap abilities. That's a key part of Duel Masters' design. It's always trying to innovate. Digimon doesn't feel like it's innovating, and what it's doing isn't terribly engaging. With the exception of Digiboost, most of these introduced concepts aren't played with much. The most interesting things in the more recent sets, in my opinion, are Sakuyomon's reduction of your opponent's security DP, and more Digimon that digivolve from 2 different colours. We don't see new keywords, new concepts, or interesting cards anywhere near enough. Everything feels like it's the core concepts on repeat, and that's fine if you can do it in new and interesting ways. Digimon is not. In many ways you can get the full Digimon experience from the starter decks, and that's a really bad thing. I don't think there is anything but your favourite Digimon and raw power to tempt you away from that experience. Is this an argument for the starter decks being too good? I guess, except Yellow, which does have significant issues. But the sets should be making you want them, to enhance the experience. Get a full experience, over a heavily controlled one. I don't think they do a good job at this. The starters arguably suffice, and the card design is terribly boring. The same thing's on repeat. That's Digimon's biggest flaw. Chrono Clash System did exactly what Duel Masters did. New mechanics each set. I think Digimon needs to ramp up new ideas. Even if they introduce a new idea one set, then expand upon it in later sets, gradually letting it build up over time, I think that's better than what they're doing. Sets need something to sell them. It can't just be raw power or character. It has to be experience too. Digimon beyond the highly enjoyable core fails at an expanded experience. It feels very samey. Now one could make the argument that Digimon is a children's card game and Pokemon, another children's card game, has much of the same problem. This is true. I just refuse to give Digimon that excuse because Duel Masters is also a children's card game and has historically done exactly what Digimon should be doing. Saying all of this, I think it should be taken into account that this is exactly where Dragon Ball Super was till Set 7, where dual colour cards were introduced and they started making new mechanics each set. So Digimon might change in the coming sets for the better. Digimon is not far off its own Set 7 right now. If you're looking for a game with a fun core, feels good mechanics, and no game design issues, where you can play with a beloved IP, the Digimon card game is a fantastic choice. It's built upon good games and is executed very well. It does nothing wrong in terms of mechanics and is a fun experience. It doesn't do anything new, so it's a bit hard to talk about beyond generalized comments. But if you like Duel Masters or Chrono Clash System, you'll like Digimon. I think you just have to keep your expectations in check. This is a children's card game, and is designed as such for now. It's got more in common with Pokemon than I really think it should. Time could help it evolve into where it has to be, but it's just a matter of when. The game is a solid 4 out of 5 until it gets more interesting, but I could see it hovering between 4 and 5 for its run, depending on what development is doing at any given time. This has been Some Gamer Dude, and thanks for watching.